Anyone can, in theory, become a WWE star, but the odds are significantly increased if the person has the right attitude, experience, skills, and look that Vince McMahon favors. Naturally, not everyone can be a tall, shredded, ultra-charismatic super worker, otherwise we would just have a world full of Dwayne Johnsons and nobody would get any work done because we would all just be looking at how handsome we all were. And truth be told, it takes all sorts to make WWE as interesting as it is. Some big-time talents are far from the blueprint of the preferred, but become stars regardless due to hard work, good timing, and a little bit of luck. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 unlikely WWE success stories. Join us. But before we start with the video, today's sponsor is not just sponsoring Cultaholic, but they're sponsoring you, the viewer, too. Together with Gemstone Legends, we are happy to announce the legendary Contest of Gemstones. And by taking part, you can win a shiny new smartphone. Bloody hell! How do I take part, Adam, I hear you ask? Well, you better believe the link is in the description below, so click it now. Gemstone Legends really is one of the coolest new puzzle RPG games ever. I mean, just look at it. Oh! It's a beautiful game. It has a cool storyline, raid bosses, dozens of characters, heaps of artifacts. Quite frankly, you would be an idiot not to play it. I mean, just look at this gameplay. Jeez Louise, it's almost arousing. Lovely. It's a great game, a superb way to unwind, and you can play it literally anywhere because the game is mobile. My favourite time to play Gemstone Legends is when I'm in the bath. You can find me in-game under the nickname Cultaholic, so let's play together! Download the game now and win prizes. You can click the link in the description below or scan my QR code here. After you install, you'll get a super bonus for new players worth $50! Gemstone Legends is also running a brilliant competition offer that will help you build your heroes even faster. This offer is only available to competition contestants, so you better get involved right now. Download the game and win great prizes. Click the link in the description below or scan the QR code and let's have some fun, baby. Number 10, Crash Holly. In the mid-90s, Erin O'Grady was a high-flying independent sensation who sometimes wrestled under a leprechaun gimmick and had caught the attention of ECW before ultimately being signed by WWE. Originally intended for the short-lived Super Astros program, Mike Lockwood instead debuted on WWE Raw as Crash Holly, the storyline cousin of Hardcore Holly and eventually Molly Holly. The Elroy Jetson lookalike had the good fortune of coming in right as the company was at its hottest and made the most of the opportunities given to him, winning the tag titles once. It was as the Houdini of Hardcore, defending the Hardcore title 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that Crash really established himself as an Attitude Era favourite, however. He was tremendously entertaining in matches and segments that took place everywhere from a kid's funhouse to the airport baggage claim. He got over and became a star despite being one of the shortest and lightest members of the roster and having initially gained his reputation thanks to a lucha style that wasn't exactly in vogue on Raw and SmackDown. Number 9, Mick Foley. Then Executive Vice President of Talent Relations Jim Ross has told the story of how Vince McMahon allowed him to sign Mick Foley to a contract in 1996 because he felt JR needed to see what it felt like to get his heart broken by a performer. Ross was very high on the hardcore legend and was convinced that he would be a big asset to the company, but the chairman felt the opposite would prove true and basically saw Foley being brought in as a cautionary tale. Foley, to his credit, had been successful on the indies, in WCW and in Japan before WWE, but hadn't yet managed to get beyond a certain level. That all changed when he went to New York, as it were, where he immediately hit the ground running in a top feud with The Undertaker. From there, he went from strength to strength and was involved in some of the best and most memorable storylines, matches, and moments of the Attitude Era, winning the WWE title on multiple occasions and cementing his legacy as one of the all-time greats. He proved a lot of people, including Vince McMahon, wrong. Number 8, James Ellsworth. Any man with 2 hands has a fighting chance, and any man with a chin like that has a fighting chance for success in the world's biggest wrestling company. James Ellsworth gained a cult following and basically became a living meme following his quick loss to Braun Strowman on the July 25th, 2016 episode of Monday Night Raw. His, unique appearance and infamous pre-match promo made him stand out, and WWE brought him back a couple of months later, this time as part of the storyline between WWE Champion AJ Styles, John Cena, and Dean Ambrose. The Chinless Wonder was properly in the mix at the top of the card and soon signed a contract for real before transitioning into a role as Carmella's manager. Ellsworth was all over SmackDown for a time and really made the absolute most out of everything that he was given. Having done the Weekend Warrior thing on the indie scene for almost 15 years before he got his WWE shot, Ellsworth must have been thrilled with the massive amount of exposure he received once plucked from obscurity. And if you want to read more about it, simply Google James Ellsworth exposed. Number 7, CM Punk. CM Punk was up against it from the moment he put pen to paper with Titan Sports Inc. The man, coming in with a reputation as an indie darling and internet favourite, was openly mocked and criticised by influential backstage power players during his dark matches before being sent to developmental territory OVW to learn how to work the WWE style. He got his break on the revamped ECW brand due to the advocacy of Paul Heyman, but it always felt like Punk's prospects were limited on the main roster. He was hardly a John Cena, Randy Orton, or Batista type, the type that was undoubtedly seen as superior during the Ruthless Aggression and PG eras. The straight-edge superstar had long hair, an unexceptional physique, tattoos and piercings, and espoused a drug and alcohol-free lifestyle. Plus, he was outspoken and would often very publicly rage against the WWE machine, which didn't endear him to management or some of the locker room elders. Despite all of this, Punk worked his backside off and showed that the cream really does rise to the top, becoming one of the most popular stars of his day. His acrimonious exit left a big Pepsi logo-shaped hole in WWE. Number 6, Hornswoggle. Dylan Postel auditioned for a job in WWE several times before finally getting the nod to portray Finley's leprechaun sidekick Hornswoggle in 2006. It was on the recommendation of the Fighting Irishman that he got the gig, which, considering how out there the character in many respects was, could have lasted anywhere between 2 weeks and 6 months, depending on how it got over. Few would have predicted that Hornswoggle would have lasted an entire decade in the company. Those 10 years saw him involved in some major angles and storylines, and there always seemed like there was at least something for him to do as his character changed and morphed as time went on. Hornswoggle certainly benefited from the company's transition to PG-rated entertainment, as he got to mingle on screen with top stars like John Cena and Vince McMahon. Little-person performers like Swoggle have had opportunities in WWE before, but typically they were brought in on a special occasions basis, and rarely did they have a proper recurring role or full-time gig. He broke the mold. Number 5, Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch began wrestling all the way back in 2002 when she was just a teenager with the pipe dream of one day making it to WWE. The road to get there was tough, and Becky had to work exceptionally hard in a landscape that was far different, i.e. less favourable, than what it is today. Feeling beaten up and losing hope, she took a 6-year break from the business and became a flight attendant before the itch to pursue her passion returned, and she found herself in the Performance Center as a member of the NXT roster. As she relayed to Old Stone Cold on the Broken Skull Sessions podcast, Lynch felt massively out of place in WWE's shiny new developmental program, which at the time was populated with supermodels and super athletes who, she felt, were miles ahead of her. So low was her confidence in her belief that she would get the opportunity she craved that the last kicker felt as though she was constantly on the cusp of getting released. Thankfully, she wasn't, and the rest is history. Lynch is now one of the biggest stars in the industry, but the man had to really fight and persevere to get there. Number 4, Colin DELANEY. Similar to James Ellsworth earlier, Colin DELANEY's appearance was likely supposed to be a one-and-done deal. DELANEY literally ran out on his regular 9-to-5 gig when the opportunity to wrestle Shelton Benjamin on ECW suddenly came up on December 18th, 2007. He got the call late in the day and sprinted to the arena after he found out that the Gold Standard needed somebody on the smaller side to beat up that night. Supposedly, while the match was going on, Vince McMahon was watching backstage and praising DELANEY's ability to sell effectively, which led to him being brought back for a series of matches against monsters like Big Daddy V, Kane, the Great Khali, and Mark Henry, which resulted in every part of his battered body being bandaged up before starting a mini feud with Miz and Morrison. An indie wrestler for only a few years at that point, point, with about 50 matches to his name, Delaney was sort of the WWE CW version of Mikey Whipwreck. He was signed to a deal and stuck around until the summer before being released due to budget cuts. His run may have been brief, but it came from absolutely nothing and secured him a peculiar place in WWE history. Number 3, Kevin Owens. The talent of Kevin Owens has never been in doubt. He can wrestle, he can brawl, he can do high flying, he can talk, he can sell, he can work heel, he can work babyface, and so on. The prize fighter can pretty much do it all, as fans of the independent scene saw for the best part of a decade as he built his glowing reputation in places like ROH and PWG before signing with WWE in the summer of 2014. It was the perfect time for him to make the jump, as WWE were all in on building the NXT brand around, in large part, well-traveled performers who had proven themselves elsewhere previously. Even so, KO was not exactly what Vince McMahon looks for in a WWE superstar in either appearance or wrestling style, and it's a testament to his talent and the way that he was used while on the Black and Gold brand that he was able to get into the position he finds himself in now. Since debuting on the main roster and beating John Cena on pay-per-view in his first match, the former NXT champion has cemented his status as one of WWE's most popular and dependable assets. Number 2, Michael Cole. It's incredible to think, but Michael Cole has been in WWE for 25 years at this point. A quarter century of vintage Michael Cole, one of the voices of sports entertainment and a man who has survived and thrived in WWE despite some people, fans included, being dead against him. A war correspondent in a previous life, Cole joined WWE in 1997 and worked primarily as a backstage interviewer before being drafted in to do commentary when lead announcer Jim Ross suffered another bout of Bell's palsy in late '98. It was a rocky start behind the desk for Cole, who pretty much had to learn on the job and encountered resistance from those who were upset that he wasn't at the same standard as the beloved and far more experienced JR. Ross returned and Cole went back to being an interviewer, but when his next opportunity arose, he was more than ready for it, and as commentator on SmackDown during the initial brand split era, received glowing praise for the job he did opposite Taz. From there, it was all gravy, or barbecue sauce, for Cole. Not bad for someone who thought they would return to the world of proper newscasting after a couple of years messing about in the wrestling. Number 1, Daniel Bryan. Small, skinny, bearded, pale, vegan nerd who likes arm bars. A little insight into the mind of Vince McMahon there, probably, when he locked eyes on Daniel Bryan, as Bryan was, rather amusingly, fast becoming the most popular person in his company. The American Dragon had been in the WWE system before, back in the early 2000s, but the graduate of the Shawn Michaels Wrestling Academy was let go from his developmental deal and instead blazed a trail on the international and independent scenes that saw him become one of the most respected wrestlers on the planet. But this is sports entertainment, not wrestling, pal, and D-Bry was subject to ridicule when he showed up on the first season of NXT The Game Show, frequently put down for his supposedly bland personality and indie following. Bryan persevered, however, and proved that the most important thing in wrestling, or sports entertainment, whatever, is connecting with the audience. Being consistently entertaining and endearingly genuine saw Bryan go from Mrs. Whipping Boy to WrestleMania main eventer, even though WWE favored others ahead of him and only relented due to the power of the Yes movement.